The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. We now would like to hand over to counsels for Mr. Nuntia to continue putting questions to this witness. Counsel Son Arun, Mr. Limsat, I have a few more questions, please. Before we broke, you told the chamber that you were the commander, or rather the chief of a unit, Unit 82, and that there were 130 people under your command. At the same time, you said Mr. Set in your statement was the commander of the battalion. Nonetheless, you just restated that Mr. Sutter was the deputy commander of that battalion responsible for respective duty. At the beginning, I asked you whether you became an ordinary soldier when you joined the army, and you won't be promoted until 1974, the day when you were promoted to the head of Unit 82. Is that correct? Response: yes, it is. Thank you. Question: in 1975, you left the Khmer Rouge Army. Is that correct? Response: yes, it is. I was transferred to a mobile unit instead. Question: after leaving the military and after leaving your post as the chief of the platoon, you became a person in charge of a mobile unit. Is my understanding correct? Response: yes, it is. Question: do you still recollect the exact date when you changed to work for a mobile unit? Response: I'm afraid I don't remember the date. I remember the year. Counsel: thank you. Before the co-investigators, you said that about 3,000 people were gathered and that they were transported on at least 30 to 40 trucks. How could you calculate the number of 3,000 people who could fit in 30 to 50 trucks? Response: I didn't say that. I said about 10 to 15 trucks. Counsel: and the document E3/364 Khmer 00242422 English 00250759 French ERN 00282197. You said this. And the question number 2. Between the 17th of April 1975 and 1979, what you did and where you lived? You say that it was on the 19th or 20th of April 1975. You received order to gather police and soldiers of all ranks who had been affiliated with the colonial regime to be executed at the Tulpochre in Kandian district. You said you were asked to wait for the trucks that gathered these people. The people were then transported to the provincial hall. Altogether, about 3,000 people were transported on trucks from across Posat province. At least there were about 30 to 40 truckloads of people transported to this provincial hall. But this morning you said that there were about 10 to 15 trucks. Which would be your statement, please? Response. I will stand by my statement this morning when I said 10 to 15 trucks. Question. Then how many people would be gathered or picked up through the trucks to that provincial hall? Response. As I told you, I was not in charge of gathering the soldiers or police. Other people were in charge of this. Question. But in your statement before the co-investigators, as I already cited from that document, you said you were ordered to receive the trucks that transported these people, and that the people were transported to the provincial hall. About 3,000 people were picked. So now, what I want you to be more precise, do you still stand by the figure you stated earlier, the 3,000 people, or would you change your comment or statement? Response. That's a rough estimation. It's about 3,000, or perhaps a little lower than 3,000, more or less 3,000 people. Counsel, if your statement were correct, it would take several trucks to transport them, not just a few trucks, as you said. Do you agree with me? Response. A truck could accommodate about 30 to 40 people at a time. Question. If you say that a truck could accommodate 30 people, 3,000 people would need 100 trucks. So, do you still stand by your statement that only 10 to 15 trucks picked these people? Response. I don't think 15 trucks would be the correct statement. Question. Mr. Witness, you are now before the chamber under oath. Can you now say again how many trucks did you believe you saw transporting the people at that time? And how many people were there? Response: I did not pay great interest to the actual number of people gathered, and it was a long time ago. My memory does not serve me very well all along. Question. I believe that my question gives you some headache. I would like to proceed to another one. These thousands of people had gathered at the provincial hall before they were transported to Tulpochri. And you said these people, upon arriving at Tulpochri, were executed, except one person who managed to escape, and you heard about this through radio communication. Can you please tell the chamber how could you hear this radio communication? Was this radio communication or operate, or rather a gadget yours? Response: the radio communication device belonged to us, our unit. Question: were you carrying that radio at that time, or was it carried by a member of your unit? Response: it was carried by a member who told me about this. Question. Then, under the same document, you say this: people who were affiliated with the Lonol regime were executed, and the executioners were also later sent to S21 for execution because they were accused of revolting against orders by Nuon Chia. I think I do not quite understand your statement when you say that the Khmer Rouge brought prisoners to Tuol Sleng, and you say that they revolted against the Khmer Rouge regime. Can you be more precise? Response: simply speaking, these soldiers, the Khmer Rouge soldiers, later on were accused of betraying Angkar, the soldiers in the northwest I'm referring to. Question: you said that the zone betrayed Angkar. Did you hear this in person from someone, or was it a rumor? Response: I learned that the remaining members of the soldiers of the Northwest in Battambang came to talk to me about this. Question: when exactly did they come to tell you about this? Response: in 1977 they did this. Question: were you no longer a military or soldier or member of the mobile unit at that time? And please observe some pause. Response: yes, I was no longer in the military or mobile unit. Question: you also added that those people revolted against the Khmer Rouge regime under order from Nuon Chea. How did you know that such orders were rendered from Nuon Chea? Did you learn about this directly from Nuon Chea, or did you hear from grapevine or through grapevine? Response: I heard from the soldiers in the Northwest who lived in Battambang at that time told me. Question: the soldiers of the zone told you about this. Can you tell the chamber who they were, what ranks they were? Response: they was in charge of a platoon, as I was. They had to flee Battambang to Posat. Question: do you still remember the names of these people who told you about this? Response: there was a man I remember by the name of Won. Question: what did he tell you? Tell the court what you remember, what he told you. Response: he just told me that the soldiers of the Northwest there was a report that soldiers of the Northwest zone betray Angkar. That's why the soldiers were destined for execution at somewhere near Bangkok. I don't know where Bangkok was or is. Question: you said you don't know the location, but you said before the co-investigators that the soldiers were sent to S21. Do you remember having said this? Response: yes, I do. I believe that when they were sent to Phnom Penh, they must have been detained at S21. Question: when you were in the army all the way to 1979, had you ever known S21? Response: no, I hadn't. I read books and magazines, and my deceased relatives rather the magazines about our old popular singers like Sin Sisamot and Ruh Serai Sutir, and I learned about S21 at that time when I read the magazines. Question: so you you learn about S21 only when you left or after the Khmer Rouge regime. Is that my understanding of your statement? Response: I read some newspapers and magazines about Tul slang at a later date, and I learned about the existence of this place at a very recent date. At that time, during the Khmer Rouge, I did not know where it was. Question. When you said Nuon Chia ordered the purchase or how people would be treated by him, was more or less things you heard from other people, and that after the Khmer Rouge troops fled to the border area, you learned more about the Khmer Rouge through reading magazines and newspapers. Is that correct? Response. I don't understand your question. Question. I asked you this question. You said that senior leaders of the militaries were sent to S-21 or Tul slang, and I asked you whether you knew Tul slang yourself, and you stated that you heard of it, and you read magazines bearing the names of Sin Sisamut and Rosaray Satir, our old singers, and that you learn of this place at a later date through magazines, not through experience. Is that what your statement about? Response. Yes, after the war was over, I learned about this, because Sin Sisamut and Madame Rosaray Satir was still alive at that time before the war was waged during the period of 1975 to 1979. Question. In the same document, you said to the investigators, there were light offense prisoners, those who stole some sweet potatoes and rice, and they were detained at coal center. About 2,000 people were detained along with their whole families. Can you tell the chamber, please, how could you come up with this number of people detained at coal office? How did you know there were about 2,000 detainees? Did you see them in person, or was that your pure speculation? Response. I was the president. Witness, please hold on. Counsel for the civil parties, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to object to this question precisely for the same reason that learned friends objected to my questions before, because it goes into the detail of the condition of the prison in Tkol office. And we agreed that this is out of the scope of case 002/01.
Council Sonaron, I would like to move to a new question then. In 1978, Khmer Rouge brought Khin and Takum and Chak to be executed at Swai At office. How did you know these three people were executed by the Khmer Rouge at Swai At? Response: I was at the center and I knew they were detained at the location where I was at. Question: you saw them being taken away from your office, is that correct? The President, witness, hold on. International lead co-lawyer for the civil parties, you may now proceed.
It appears that for the same reasons, we object to say that we are in 1978 regarding executions. So I object, and I say that this question is not relevant, like the previous question, which we objected to.
Council Son Arun, I was asking that question because I would like to establish the fact as to whether the witness saw the event happen.
The interpreters are experiencing some technical problems, and it is not possible for us to interpret what the parties are saying.
One, two, three, checking. It works now. The President, Counsel Son Arun, you may continue putting your questions to the witness, but please be reminded that you should not stray away from the scope of the trial, and that it was counsel for the accused who took issue with the learned colleague on the other stage, across from the stage, who would be straying from the scope of the proceedings. So, since you started this, you should also make sure that you are following, you are also not straying away from this scope. Counsel Sonarun, thank you, Mr. President. And the document is 3/364, the same document. You testified before the co-investigators that you never saw any Khmer Rouge leaders, including Ieng Sari, Ieng Therit, Duch, visiting the base. You only saw Mr. Nuon Chea on one occasion. Do you still recollect having said this to the investigators? Response: yes, I do. I never saw the other people other than him on that one occasion. Question: I may seek some clarification. You said you saw Mr. Nuon Chea on one occasion. Did you see him in person, or you heard from others that he was there? Response: I saw him with my own eyes in Posat province when he was on his way from Posat to Battambang. Question: where did you see him? And what did he do? What was he doing when you saw him? And when? Response: it was in 1979 in Battambang province. Question: where were you that made it possible for you to see him? And what did he do at that time? Response: he did nothing other than being on his trip. Question: where did you see him? And what did you do, or what was he doing? Was he traveling, talking to people, sitting down? Response: he was on a vehicle traveling to Battambang. Question: did you know Nuon Chea before you saw him? You said when you saw him, you believed that it was Nuon Chea, but did you know him before you saw him? Response: our troops were stationed along this national road, and we were told who would be passing us. Question: when you were told that the person in the car was Nuon Chea, or that person was Nuon Chea, was he in the car? Response: yes, he was. Counsel, thank you.
I would like to move on. From 1971 through 1975, you were a military member of the Khmer Rouge. You were working with them. You came to know a lot of issues. Did you ever attend any training or meeting with any leaders in Posat province? Response. No, I did not meet with leaders from the center. I met only leaders at the sector. They convened meeting, and then after that the sector leaders would pass on the information to people down below. When they were holding meeting at the provincial hall of soldiers and officials of Lonnol administration, do you know who among the Khmer Rouge leader were presiding or giving lectures or talked during that meeting? Response. Takon from the zone committee and Tawang also from zone committee. And then there were also representatives from the sector committee. Question. How about yourself? Where were you at that time, and in what capacity were you there? What did you do? Respond. I was simply a security guard. I provided security protection around the province. Question. I have only one more question for you. I just ask you for your clarification in relation to the military structure. And then after this question, I'm going to cede the floor to my esteemed colleague. You attended training. You must have understood the Khmer Rouge military structure from your level, because you at that time were in charge of a platoon, and you had around 30 soldiers under your supervision. Can you tell the court above the platoon what was the hierarchical structure in the military rank? Can you recall at that time? Response. As far as the military administration or structure was concerned, we had platoon comprising of 30 soldiers in a platoon, and in that platoon there was a commander, deputy commander, and member. And in a squad there was 12 members. And from squad, then there would be a platoon. 3 platoon made up a company, and 3 companies made up a battalion, and 3 battalions made up a brigade. And then there was a hierarchy above that. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank you, Mr. Limchat. I do not have any question. Now I cede the floor to my colleague, the President. Mr. Kope, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, I apologize to go back to the question of your age, but just to be clear, this morning, Mr. President asked you what your age was, and you replied that you were 54. Is that correct?
Yes, I did say that. I was 54 when I answered to the President's question.
On a question from my colleague earlier this afternoon, you said that you were born in 1955, correct?
Yes, yes, I did.
Do you know what year we live in, Mr. Witness?
2013.
Are you sure you are 54 years old?
I am not sure because I have not done the calculation beforehand.
You also said that you were born in the year of the monkey. Could it be that the year of the monkey was in 1956?
It's not audible for the interpreter.
Could you answer the question, Mr. Witness? Could it be that the year of the monkey was in 1956?
I do not really know whether or not it was correct, but I only know that I was born in the year of monkey.
I understand, Mr. Witness, that you joined the revolution in 1971. How old were you when you joined the revolution?
Then I was 21.
Mr. Witness, you said earlier you went to the pagoda school. How old were you when you left the pagoda school to join the revolution?
I stayed in the pagoda when I was around 15 or 16 years old. Then I joined the revolution when I was 21, 22.
When you were in the pagoda school, were you also taught how to make calculations?
I was only taught the Buddhist Dharma. I did not study arithmetic or computing.
Mr. Witness, you were speaking about 15 trucks earlier, and you were saying that there were about 30, 40 people in a truck. How many people were there, according to you, totally in those trucks?
I actually did not pay attention. I only could come up with the estimate number of people on the car. So it varied from car to car. It could have been 20, 30 on each car. I did not actually pay attention to counting the numbers of people because my duty was merely to guard the place.
But if you're correct, and there were 15 trucks with 30 people in the trucks, then how many people were there in total in these trucks?
As I said, I did not do the counting.
I will move on, Mr. Witness. Could you tell the Chamber a little bit more about the fights and the battles that took place between the Revolutionary Army and the Lon Nol soldiers before 17 April 1975?
From 1971 through 1973, they actually declare the war. The upper authority had instructed the people in the lower rank to be prepared to go into war. That was in 1973. And in 1993, they waged war against the opposing force up until 1975.
My question to you, Mr. Witness, was whether you yourself and your platoon engaged actively in combat with Lon Nol soldiers in the Pursat province.
Of course, my platoon was attached to Pursat province, and we were on duty over there.
But have you been fighting with Lon Nol soldiers? Have you been shooting your rifle? Were you wounded maybe in one of the combat activities with the Lon Nol soldiers?
Yes, we did fight with Ronald soldier, and I got injured once. Even now, a piece of shrapnel is inside my body, and if I work hard, then I would see my body swollen because I was once wounded by shrapnel.
And do you remember which year you were wounded? You got wounded?
It was in late 1974.
And where was that? In Pursat province that you got wounded?
Yes, I was wounded in Pursat province, just a bit way down of Pursat province.
Was that in combat close to the fortress of Tolpo Shrey?
At the fort of Tolpo Shrey, before the 17th of April 1975, I was stationed over there. But when I was wounded, it was somewhere else. It was not that in that place. My duty station was from one position to all the way to Mong district near Bat Nambong, and we had to actually change our position from time to time.
Were you ever engaged in an attack with the revolutionary forces on the fort of Tolpo Shrey?
I was stationed there, and of course I was engaged in combat over there. My troop were fighting with them, and I could not even retrieve the dead body of my soldiers because they had been killed when we were engaged in fighting. So 2 of our soldiers were dead during the combat.
Mr. Witness, you have testified earlier that you estimated that around 100 Lon Nol soldiers from the Lon Nol regime, were stationed at the fortress of Tolpo Shrey. Could you tell the chamber how you got to this number of about 100 soldiers?
It was the number of soldiers who were stationed over there. There were commandos and military.
But had you ever heard in those years before 75 or in 1975 that there were actually around 100 troops in that fortress of Tolpo Shrey? On the 17th of April 1975, I
I actually went through this area through Tur Pochray all the way up to Posat province. So at that time I realized it.
Now there were, according to you, about 100 soldiers at Fort Tulpo Shray. Do you know how many soldiers there were stationed at Pusat province town, respectively at Po?
I do not recall. There were many fortresses. From Posat down to Tulpochray, there were around 6-7 fortresses. Po village fortress, Koko, Potivong, and then the fortress in the provincial towns. And there, of course, there were many other fortresses. There could have been hundreds or thousands of fortresses.
Are you able to give an estimate to the chamber of how many soldiers the former Lon Nol regime were stationed in the province of Pursat?
There were so many soldiers, all the way from Mong to Koko stream. There were so many Lon Nol soldiers. I do not know. I am sure there was no reason I could know this, because there were many fortresses and there were so many soldiers of Lon Nol. And I did not even know how many soldiers there were in each fort. So I cannot know how many soldiers there were at the time from Lon Nol administration.
Mr. Witness, you've testified earlier about the commander and the deputy commander of the fort in Tolpo Shray, Commander Pell and Commander Ru. What do you know about this commander and his deputy commander?
I came along to Pochray, and at that time they told me the commander of Lon Nol soldier in Po village, Pal was the commander. He was a captain at that time in Po village. I actually left Tulpochray and I stayed overnight in Po village before I left for Posat provincial town.
So Commander Pell was a captain. What else do you know about him? Was he, for instance, involved in the active combat with the Revolutionary Armed Forces?
I did not know how many soldiers were subordinate to him, but when they convened the soldier to a meeting, they actually organized it, and they actually told me as well who the commander was and who the deputy commander was. And as for the weaponry, they transport it to different locations. I simply move on from one location to another all the way up to the provincial town.
But do you know if Commander Pell or his deputy commander Ru were involved in active combat with your platoon or other platoons from the Revolutionary Army?
On this issue, it's a bit difficult. They were on one side, and I was on the other side. I was among the revolutionary armed forces of the Khmer Rouge, and they were the armies of Lon Nol, and we were actually confronting with one another. So the situation was fragile, and the fighting could erupt any time. So I did not know that much on the other side.
Do you remember names of commanders of the Lon Nol army higher in rank than Commander Pell and Ru in the Pursat province?
I do not know. I only saw their faces, and I also saw their uniform. They had some military rank with them. For example, I saw a person wearing a uniform with captain rank or with a major rank or so, but I do not know who was who really. I only knew that their fortress was in this location and in that location, but I did not know the detail. The President. Thank you, Council. I know that you have further question, but may I ask you how much time do you envisage you will need to put question to the witness? Mr. Kopei, can you advise the chamber as to how much time you will need to put the question to the witness?
Mr. President, I'm afraid we will be needing the full allotted time to us, so I think we will finish at lunchtime tomorrow. With 20 minutes, half hour for the Kirsampanti.
President, thank you. It is now appropriate moment already for the adjournment. The chamber will adjourn now, and the next sessions will commence tomorrow at 9 a.m. For tomorrow's sessions, the chamber will begin by hearing the testimony of Mr. Lim Sat. Questions continue to be put by counsels for Mr. Nuon Chea and defense team for Mr. Kyosampon. Mr. Lim Sat, your testimony is not yet complete. We would like you to return to the courtroom tomorrow by 9 a.m. Court officer is now directed to assist with the vessel unit so that Mr. Lim Sat can be properly assisted during the adjournment, and that he be returned to the courtroom tomorrow by 9 a.m. Security personnel are now directed to bring Mr. Kyosampon and Nuon Chea back to the detention facility and have them returned to the courtroom by tomorrow 9 a.m. Mr. Nuon Chea is directed to be brought to his holding cell only, where he can observe the proceedings from there through audio visual link. The court is adjourned.